We are the Keyboard Samurai, a podcast focused on sharing insights to help those working in cybersecurity companies, be them technology or services. Each session, your host, Wil Klusovsky, aka Wil Klu, sits down with professionals in our industry to illuminate topics that will help your security biz, team, or self be better. Let's hack into it now. Hey everybody, welcome back. Another exciting episode of Keyboard Samurai. As always, please like and subscribe so that you can find out when we do new stuff every week. And today I am excited to have a pretty big shot, Mr. Bigwig from LinkedIn with his like 50, 60,000 followers. Sairam, why don't you tell us who you are and why we care?
Thanks for that intro, Will. Not sure I'm a big shot, but here goes nothing. So I've been in the AI field for about 15 years now, so kind of a dinosaur when you think about how fast things are moving. And I've worked on a bunch of different tech, including mobile phones, data centers, and now autonomous vehicles. I've also had the privilege of working with space scientists who are trying to figure out things about the sun using AI. And on the side, I am an educator and author, and I love teaching and writing. So that's a bit about me.
That's fantastic. I love teaching and educating too. I like to be able to do it. I think we both kind of do it on our own terms. I used to want to be like in a classroom teaching people, but I've had to do that a couple times now, and I'm glad I don't do that for a career. But 15 years in AI, so that's a lot. I mean, I think, well, anybody listening to this podcast knows AI didn't get invented like 2 or 3 years ago, when everybody else learned about it. But I guess, initially, like, what's the big difference between like 15 years ago when you were first doing it and kind of where we are now? Like, how did we get to here, and what were the differences?
Actually, it goes a long way back, even in longer than 15 years. The original seeds for this AI revolution were planted in 1940, give or take.
Wow.
So it's been a while now. It's been a while coming. So, but 15 years ago and now, I think the key difference is there were these types of AI models called neural networks that resemble the human brain very loosely. I want to caveat that.
All the neuroscience
they're inspired.
Yes, go crazy.
they are loosely inspired by the human brain. And what happened was we suddenly had large volumes of data. We had amazing compute abilities thanks to GPU clusters. And then all of a sudden, these neural networks that could learn patterns from large volumes of data and needed a lot of compute suddenly had both of those ingredients. And when that kicked in, everything else sort of shifted from circa 2012 till now. That's kind of been the flavor of the season. Before that, it was more something called traditional machine learning, where you'd have a lot of experts who are involved in something called feature engineering, which is like trying to stare at the data, whether it's images, text, whatever, and then really try to understand what are the key aspects of the data that you could feed to a model so that it kind of learns patterns from that, as opposed to trying to learn everything from the mess. Nowadays, it's like we collect a whole bunch of data and then we feed it to these neural networks, and off they go. So that's been the main difference.
Yeah, I know back in the mid 2010s when I started getting consulting, we had one of our differentiators was we used machine learning with our security operations. So, but again, it was very human intensive. We had to feed it all the data and then tell it these are the bad things and these are the good things and this is why, and basically teach it pattern recognition, right? Because you couldn't do signature based because the malware was changing all the time. So that kind of, I can relate to that a little bit.
I mean, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say that, it's basically, the algorithms are still trying to come up. These models are still trying to learn the rules from the data. That hasn't changed. What has changed is how much of this iterative human involvement is necessary in preparing the data, extracting features from it, and then feeding it to the model. So a lot of that has somewhat reduced, but it's still a lot of work, and I don't want to trivialize the amount of efforts that are going on to get these models out to production, because I know the pain.
Yeah, no doubt. And I still, I mean, I dumb it down a lot and kind of to people who don't understand the tech. I'm like, it's still just autocomplete on steroids, right? It's not actually thinking. It just knows, like, if you say the cat hit the mat is most likely what it's been taught to say, and then you have to tell it, well, mat's not a word in our world, so then what's the next likelihood thing, right? So that's I think people get, because it's great. I use it every day, like, it makes my job easier. But yeah, it's not necessarily thinking as much as I think some people think it is.
Yeah, it's definitely pattern matching. I know there's a lot of research now to make these reasoning models, trying to force these models to show their thinking and then try to come up with solutions. But like the fundamental building blocks of these models is that you, at least the text generation models, is that you feed them the known internet, and then you let them understand grammar, syntax, context, uh, places, names, all of those things. And then when you give it a new sentence, it's like, hang on a minute, I've learned all these examples, let me check which is the most likely word that's going to complete the sentence. But then on top of that, what you do is you then have this additional step where you tune it on data that you care about. So for example, if you are, say, creating a movie reviewer of sorts, right, and you would then train it on a very small data set after this initial phase where it's like swallowed the internet. You'd have it sort of go through these movie reviews and say, hang on, this is a positive review, this is a negative review. And then you need a much smaller volume of data to do this process. And then that's why it's kind of confusing, because it feels like, hey, it really understands these reviews. And it's but those are the subtle aspects that kind of mislead people who maybe aren't deeply involved in the tech.
Right. Yeah, I know, with, like, again, in security with agentic AI in the SOC, that's really good at showing, well, I saw this and I made this decision and this is why. And then you can be like, okay, cool, I understand your thought process. And then as a junior analyst, I can learn from that. And as a senior analyst, I can be like, no, that's not right, you should have done it this way. And then, oh, okay, I learned. So it's similar to that language model, but I know that's a big deal with, we fear that, if AI starts doing everything, that we won't learn anything. So we have to make sure that we can, like, peek behind the curtains continually, I think.
Kind of like the Wall-E movie where everyone's on a spaceship and nobody knows what a plant is.
I mean, I do think we're going to go to Idiocracy, which is, to me, Wall-E is Idiocracy 2, the movie where we get Terry Crews as president. So Sairam, you wrote a book.
I did.
What's the book, and what's the book about?
Okay, so the book is called AI for the Rest of Us, and it's a illustrated book that is an introduction to AI and how it works behind the scenes. And I wrote it for people who don't come from a coding background or who don't come from a mathematical background. Because the thing I noticed about books on AI is that they either assume that you know how to code, which is awesome, because then you can explain all these concepts through code. It's a lot easier to grasp. Or they assume that you have a very strong background in mathematics and statistics, and then you can explain it through equations and derivations and all that, which is also good. But then those are two separate sets of audiences. Now there is a whole bunch of us who lie in the middle ground, who are technical but not from either places. Like, for example, you could have managers, directors, product managers. I mean, product managers code these days, I can't say that anymore. But program managers and others who are trying to understand what the heck's going on with AI. And this is written in plain English. It doesn't have a prerequisite reading. And it's going to explain everything from the basics of AI all the way to ChatGPT and all the advanced stuff. So this is my attempt at sort of helping somebody understand AI, and something I wish I had when I was starting out many years ago.
So that's outstanding. I know I talked to a buddy of mine who's just like you, like really deep and smart into AI. And when I was first discovering it, and I was like, how do I learn about AI? And he kind of was like, he told me first, he's like, just go use it and ask it about itself. And I was like, well, okay, I get that. But I was like, what if I really want to understand like behind, like, the ones and zeros of it? Sometimes like guys like us, we tend to like want to know more than we need to. And he literally said, do you care? And I was like, I don't know. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. Maybe I just want to. So is this something that would help me kind of understand a little more of that that underneath the covers kind of stuff?
Absolutely. And that was part of the motivation behind writing the book, because I feel like between the business side of companies and the engineering side of companies, there's often a disconnect in how they communicate with each other, because there's an expectation that, oh, we have AI so we can do anything, or just add AI to our current product, it'll just magically become better. It doesn't work that way. And then when engineers are trying to explain why it doesn't work, there's a lot of translation that's needed. And on the other side, for decision makers who are trying to bet which direction to go with the company and the roadmap and all of that, they may not need to fine tune a language model, and they may not need to do more than prompting for the day to day, which is fine. But they do need to understand the basics and the foundations that don't change. And that's where the book comes in. So it'll teach you everything behind the scenes, and hopefully at the end of it, you come away with a shared language that you can use on either side. So if your boss or your boss's boss or someone else is annoying you by asking why AI can't do something, this is your guide to explaining. And on the other side, if you are the boss or the boss's boss, then this is your way to speak smarter to engineers and then understand where they're coming from. And it'll also help you spot when your engineers want to do something because they're really excited about a project but doesn't add business value. So
that's so everything you just said takes me out of a job.
I'm sorry.
I mean, like, I've prided myself on being like the interpreter that can go speak to all the different areas and explain the complicated to the people with less knowledge and all that. And I talk constantly about startups and people like, oh, I have this really great idea. And I'm like, well, what is it? What is it? How does it actually help the business? Right.
That's
So
that's the disconnect, isn't it? Oftentimes, like engineering can be very distracting at times when you have this shiny new toy that everybody seems to be talking about, and you want to desperately build something with it. But then, hang on, I need to find a way to connect this to the business. That's where things get tricky.
yeah, I saw a post today. Some media thing talked about like all of this basically AI debt that has already started to incur. Because everybody was like, "Oh, we got to go do this because it's big and shiny and cool, and we have to." And now they realize that, oh, we've got a problem. And I always, from a security perspective, I still think there's going to be a fallout from everybody who just kind of onboarded with it really quick and didn't bother to think about governance or controls. But it's when that bomb blows up, I'm not really sure.
If anything, this the rise of AI assisted coding is going to make software engineering even more valuable, like good software engineering practices. And similarly, it's going to make security practices and governance even more valuable, because both of those things will be the differentiator between something that actually stays in production and is serving customers properly versus something that at 3 a.m. suddenly just breaks, or some breach happens and people are running here and there to figure out what's going on. So if anything, it's a great time to be in either of those fields.
Yeah, I look at it as like I've heard some other people say they essentially the QA is now even more important. Right, that's kind of what it comes down to. Like, is it because we never taught developers how to code securely to begin with. So now the AI learned how to code on bad code to begin with, or insecure code. I won't say bad code. And then now it's like writing. And so now we need people who understand both of those aspects to kind of keep it in line and continue to grow it. So that's kind of my thought process too. Like you said, really senior, not senior necessarily, but really smart people on the engineering and security side to be able to look into it and evaluate. Wait, is this right? Is this wrong? Like, do we need to do something about it?
Absolutely. It's and there's that's just the software, releasing the software side of it. The AI side of it also has a lot of gaps from the security perspective that we need to consider, like privacy and how whether the data is being anonymized and all of those uh, tiny details that are crucial so that your customers actually trust your product, right? So
Yeah, the whole idea of like we're just going to throw AI into everything, and not have, like, all your terms and conditions just change overnight. It's going on. So, can you give us a taste of something from the book that would like be like? Is there a little story without giving it away? We want people to go buy it, but is there something about it specific, maybe a chapter or a cool story you got from it?
I can give you an excerpt. I probably won't be quoting it word for word, but I can explain how these image generation models at a very very high level. There's a lot more detail to it, but at a very high level, I can give you two ways to explain how these image generation models work, and you'd probably walk away remembering the method after this. That's my hope. So let's see how this goes. First one. So you are. So have you tried to pour milk into black coffee?
Sure.
Yeah. I'm assuming you're a coffee drinker. Excellent. And have you seen, like, obviously we're in a rush in the morning, so we're just pouring the milk really fast. But if you do it slowly, you'll notice that it hits the spot, on the coffee surface, and then starts spreading. And then after a point, once it's swirled enough, it's like indistinguishable from, which is the coffee, which is the milk. You really can't say which is which. Now imagine you could reverse the process where magically you can unswirl, and as you're unswirling, the milk separates from the coffee and you have the two liquids separately. And that's literally the principle behind how these image generation models work. So what you do is you take a whole bunch of noise, and you take it a perfectly fine image, and you throw the noise onto the image, and then you ask this model to say, can you just remove the noise away from this noisy image? And it obliges. It's trying to learn. Initially you just throw a little bit of noise, you don't throw a whole bunch of noise. And then the next time around you take another image, and then you throw a whole more of noise. You still can see the picture, but it's still harder. And you say, can you do this? Can you remove the noise from this? And then it tries. And then this is the magic trick, which is you've shown it enough noisy pictures to the point where it has an idea of how to remove noise from each of these pictures, and learns from the feedback that you give it, that you just take a picture of noise. There is no picture behind the noise. You just give the noise to the model and say, this is a very noisy image, can you please denoise it? And it does. But the poor thing doesn't know there's no image behind this noise. So it uses all the examples it's learned. I'm removing noise in this way, so this reminds me of that other image that I denoise. So I'm going to add a bit, a ear here or an eye there, and then eventually it's done. It's actually created an image, thinking there's something, it's actually denoising. That's literally how these models work. So it's mind-boggling how that works. But there you go.
That's impressive. And you're right. It's like reverse engineering as education, right? That's pretty amazing. I did not know that. And that makes sense, because you wonder, like, you can't just throw a bunch of pictures at it and be like, this is a hand. This is, like, teaching it would be like prohibitive. So
You need a lot of examples. Exactly.
yeah, exactly. Like so many different, yeah. Maybe that'll help me with my Midjourney prompts, so I could get people to go in the right direction now. That's the worst.
And that's where the text comes in, right? So
Yeah.
you touched on a very very interesting thing, because if you don't give the text, it doesn't know what's hiding behind the noise, right? It can randomly, based on what examples it's seen before, it can just randomly generate an image which may or may not make sense. Like, for example, if all you've shown it are images of cats and dogs that are noised in some way, and it's successfully denoising them, when you give it noise, you might either get a cat or a dog. You have no idea. But if you say that there is a dog behind this noise and it's got its tongue out, you're steering it towards a particular type of image, and that allows it to denoise it in a certain way, poor thing, it still believes there's a dog behind the noise, and it does it so that you actually get a picture of the dog. So that's where the prompt comes in.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. I think that is one of the best ways I've ever heard it explained, and I totally get it. So, yeah, on that bomb, that is outstanding. So Sairam, where can people find you? I could talk about this forever, but I won't. Where can people find you on the interwebs, and where can they get the book, and when's it coming out?
So I'm on LinkedIn. You can search for my name. I apologize for my last name. It's it's a little difficult to spell. But then again, there are names that are harder than mine. I'm on LinkedIn with the same name, Sairam Sundaresan. I'm on Substack. I have a newsletter called Gradient Ascent, where I write articles like to explain AI and help people break into the field. And my book's called AI for the Rest of Us. It's coming out October 30th, and it should be available everywhere where books are sold. So
everywhere books are sold. That's outstanding. Well, Sairam, thanks so much for spending time with us, man. This was really eye-opening for me. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for enjoying Keyboard Samurai Podcast. If you'd like to engage, find Wil on LinkedIn at /WilKlu or visit at wilklu.me. That's WILKLU.me for more info. Disconnecting now. Synac you later.